This episode of the SwitchCast is produced by Randy Beekler, our honored Patreon member and Switch King.
All hail the Switch King!
All hail the Switch King!
Hi everybody, I'm KC.
And I'm JV.
And this is the SwitchCast, the podcast for the Nintendo Switch Raconteur. And we have quite a yarn to weave with you this week. We're actually changing up a lot of the formula this week. We want to try something new. It's about time to, spice things up. I feel like with the Switch Online coming out, and JV and I just always in our constant quest to find new ways to make the show innovative, interesting, and just always pushing our boundaries. We're going to try mixing things up a little bit this week, so let us know what you think about the new formula, but we're still going to hit up all the things that you like. We're still going to do reviews. We're still going to talk about awesome topics. We're going to hear what you have to say, and we're going to go over the news and stuff. So all that's going to be here. It's just going to be packaged a little bit differently here. So are you excited to try this out, JV?
Oh yeah, why not? And it's not that much different from what we normally do, but whenever there's something that we really want to talk about, we want to dedicate some time to really dive deep.
This might make us a little more flexible in addressing those sort of things. So we'll see how that goes, but everyone strap in for the ride. But that's not the only new and exciting thing going on. With the big advent of the Nintendo Online service, we all got a big batch of NES classics, yes?
Oh, yeah.
I felt it would be a really cool idea just to try out something different. I haven't run a tournament or any kind of gaming event in a while on a weekend. We had a couple of a couple of Monster Hunter meetups over the weeks, and we had some great cooperative stuff going on lately, but not a real competition, just something to get people get their energy going and the thirst for victory. And I thought it might be fun to try out some NES Olympics this weekend, and I'm going to make basically a nincathlon of games. I'm going to pick basically based on whoever shows up will get a vote, and I'm going to try to make a little bit of a series of games that people are going to compete in. We're going to play maybe, some ice hockey or some, ice climbers, all sorts of things like that. And we're just going to tally up the scores and how people do from various games, and we're going to declare an NES champion for the week. It's just all in fun. I'm going to throw together some sort of prize for the winners, but it's mostly just for fun, and it's a good excuse to play online with the NES classics with some of our other Switch Cat friends.
I feel like this is such a brilliant idea because a lot of NES games are pretty timeless, especially when it comes to the score-chasing style of gaming. And I feel like that score chase competitive mentality is kind of lost nowadays, and this type of competition hopefully brings it back a bit.
Yes, and I want to do a variety of games because I don't want people to just get really good at one game. In fact, it's going to be semi-random, so you can't just focus on the games. I just want people to go in there with a general skill set and not 100% know what games they're going to be playing for the day, and then we'll see what we play, and then I have a scoring system set up, but again, I don't want to reveal anything right now until the time of, because I don't want people to go in there and just practice the exact things I'm preparing to test them on for this competition.
And I feel like if there's any sort of premeditated idea of what the games are going to be, people are going to practice just those games. And
exactly.
Just like the Nintendo World Championships, we want to make sure people are full-fledged NES fans and can be good at all of them.
So if you're interested in this, I'm going to make an event on the Facebook group. You can check that out if you go to the SwitchCast Facebook group. I'll also make a post in our Discord chat, of course, but it's going to be, I'm going to probably schedule for this Saturday, 5 o'clock Eastern time. That seems to be the closest thing I can get to a time that accommodates most people. So we're going to shoot for that.
It seems like a reasonable hour anyway, and I think we'll do what we can to accommodate as many people as possible.
Right. So speaking of upcoming games and events, you've been pretty hyped for something non-Switch related, but still Nintendo tied. That's coming out. Should be playable as of the day we post this. Yes.
Yeah. Right. So, I got a new iPhone XS Max, and I was like, you know what? I kind of want to play one of those games on my phone where I can pick it up, just play for a little bit, invest a little bit of time, and then progress slowly. And so I remembered Dragalia Lost, which was the Nintendo and Cygames partnership game for the mobile platform, coming out today.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes. We got the pre-downloads. I have it all loaded on my phone. You mentioned it, and a couple people in the Discord chat were kind of hyped about it and going to try it out. So, I looked at their trailer, the Nintendo Direct style video they even had for it. And, once it showed that there was live multiplayer, I was like, all right, this could definitely complement my gaming time in those moments where I don't have my Switch on hand. So yeah, I'll give this a shot.
So if you don't know what Dragalia Lost is, it is a kind of a gacha style game where you have a selection of heroes and you can randomly collect more heroes as you progress through the game. But it is a dungeon-based RPG. I don't know if I would describe it like Diablo or...
I'd call it an action RPG. It's a Diablo-like game, but yeah, a little lighter on the...
definitely. So
the strategy, but
yeah. You have a character and then you go through dungeons in real time, attacking in real time, dodging monster attacks, going into essentially a dungeon run, and then coming out of that dungeon with loot. And then that's a continuous cycle, but what makes it super interesting, as what Casey mentioned earlier, is that this is a mobile game with full-fledged online multiplayer, which means we could actually group up, set up our own dedicated room to have our 4 characters crawl dungeons in real time. And that is super unique for this style of game.
Now you also had played Nintendo's the other. Well, I know they've had a couple of mobile games, but you played their Fire Emblem one, right?
Yeah, I played Fire Emblem Heroes, and while that was fun for a while, and collecting Fire Emblem characters that you liked is pretty cool. It wasn't any direct real-time multiplayer with or against anyone. So that was kind of a missing element that I was really wanting from Fire Emblem Heroes.
That's what made me fade from it over time, too.
Yeah.
I was into it for like the first couple of weeks, and just the lack of any meaningful interaction with other friends was what kind of trailed off for me.
Right. But what's cool about Dragalia Lost is that there is direct... real-time multiplayer. You're crawling dungeons together with all the characters you collected. And what's even better is that since it's purely a co-op experience, you're not necessarily having to worry about getting the best and baddest characters, getting the strongest characters. There's no competitive element to it, so there's no there's no pressure to get the most competitive or most meta characters to play as. And I feel like that's just the experience that I really want on a mobile platform right now.
Yeah, exactly. Just something casual to dip into on those, like, literally I have 5 minutes just to kill while I'm in front of my computer, maybe waiting for a file to load or something, and I'm just like, it's not quite enough time to whip out my Switch to play another round of, like, Bad North, which I did have a weird little kick of playing again this week. But I just want to check on my town, maybe upgrade a couple buildings, do a quick dungeon run. Yeah, so we'll see how this works. I like Nintendo's direction in the mobile games, and it does sometimes herald things to come for the Switch anyway. So
right, exactly, and seeing how they've treated Fire Emblem Heroes and even Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, they're generally pretty generous with whatever free currency that they're supposed to utilize. And even Cygames is pretty generous with their currency too, with Grand Blue Fantasy and Shadowverse. So
they were nutso with how much free stuff I got in Shadowverse. I really, 90% of my collection was there, and I always know a game is generous when I feel like I better give them $5. They've given me so much stuff. I really feel guilty that I haven't paid them anything yet.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm on the same boat. And And we might talk about it more in the future, but I'm just throwing it out there to the Discord community. We have a couple of people interested, and if there's any others, then we might set a dedicated room for it.
All right, so we're a podcast again, though, that is about the Nintendo Switch, so we are going to go and switch over to our game station, which is what I'm just going to temporarily call our game review section now, just because I like trying new things. But before we go into that and start talking about what we've been playing this week, I just want to remind everyone, as JV mentioned, and we always talk about, we have that great Discord chat. That is the premier place to be if you want to be a part of this Nintendo Switch community we have rolling here. There are dozens and dozens of people who are active on there every day. JV and I are there all the time, and that's where we kind of work out any game we have a channel for. Most of the big and current games are have their own channels, and there's groups always forming. It's a really cool crew, and they're always up for, just joining people and making a group. And some people, if they're above your, like all the time, I'll go on there if I'm just going to do Monster Hunter. I was like, I really just want to rank up. Somebody like Dragonflame will just show up with his level 80 character and say, hey, I'll help you kill like 3 missions in 10 minutes,
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, and we've said this before in the past, our Discord community is incredible when it comes to being warm, friendly, and nice. We do not tolerate any form of toxicity and trolling, even to like the most minute degree. That's just not what we're about. So if you want to join a friendly, welcoming community and play some Nintendo Switch games, this is the one to join. For sure. And
yeah, a little shout out to everybody who's been really good about alerting us anytime there has been any inkling of somebody, causing some trouble. They have messaged us without remorse and let us make decisions from there, and then we decide how to handle any problem. So thank you guys for being vigilant. It's honestly, we just kind of react. You're the ones who have been actively keeping it such an awesome community.
Oh, absolutely. Special thanks to all of you who are really good about keeping the place clean, friendly, and awesome. You know who you are.
Yes. And if you guys want to visit that, there's a link to our Discord in the show notes, as well as all of our other awesome social media groups. All right, JV, are you ready for some game reviews?
Oh, yeah. Let's stop on by the game station.
All right, Game Station, and we have a good little selection of games here, but actually, JV, I'm going to let you pick which one of these two games. I played a couple of tabletop-inspired titles this week, and they're both totally different types of tabletop experiences. I'll give you the choice. Do you want to hear about the board game or the role-playing game?
Let's start with the proper board game. Let's do that.
Okay, that is Armello, and Armello is Alright, so the best way to describe what Armello is here is it does for board games, I feel, what Hearthstone did for the CCG, for the collectible card game.
I know when it comes to Armello, I can say that I was enamored by the art style immediately when I saw trailers for this.
Oh, no, it definitely has this great presentation of a board game that doesn't look like a board game at first blush. You'll look at it, and it just looks like this 3D map of the world. It looks like a strategy game, actually, because it has this castle in the center. It has these little forts, one on each corner, so there's like 4 of them, and there's like a hex grid with different tiles for different types of locations that are randomly assigned every time you play it. So there's like swamps, there's ruins, there's dungeons to explore, spawning grounds for monsters, all sorts of things like that. But the game is actually, I would kind of liken it almost like this anthropomorph version of Game of Thrones with these animal characters all representing these different houses. And in the center, in that castle, is the lion, who is the king.
Okay. And that's kind of like King's Landing?
It kind of is, yeah. It's like that. And but the main premise is there's this stuff called the rot. The rot is like this infection of evil, And since the king's infected with it, he is going to die. But before he does, he's going crazier and crazier, and he's doing bad things, and he's just going to go more and more evil and do more evil stuff before he finally kicks the bucket, and then someone has to kind of fill in his place at that point.
So he's going mad. He's becoming a mad king?
Yes, he is becoming a mad king. And that drives the plot. So, like I said, the point is you want to have your house fill in as the new ruling power when he finally dies. And there are 4 actual ways to do this. So the simplest way is if you want to, you can be the heroic Kingslayer, and that is actually the name of this type of victory. You can be the Kingslayer, and if you actually can just breach his castle, get in there with a powerful enough character, and fight the king and defeat him, you win. But that's very hard because he has a lot of great gear, he has a lot of health to start, and yeah, the fortification's also there, so it's not an easy task to do. Another way to win is if you, so the rot increases on him every turn. And there's a gameplay mechanic in here where if 2 infected characters fight, whoever has more of the rot takes the lesser infected character's rot score and uses it to boost his stats. So let's say I have 5 rot and you have 2, I take your 2 and I use that as added dice when we battle because it has like this dice-based combat. So I get 2 extra dice. So you can use that if you can outspeed the king and go for an evil victory. You can try to intentionally infect your character and then outrot the king and use his own evil against him to kill him.
So normally you wouldn't necessarily want to have infected characters on your side. But there's that element that lets you use that to your advantage in an alternate win condition style mechanic.
You kind of don't want to have a little rot. You either want to go totally in and just be really evil or have none. But if you have a little bit, that's like the worst. To have a little bit of rot, it just means everything evil's going to take advantage of that. So yeah.
Right.
You could also win through a political victory. There's a stat in this game, your influence, your prestige level. And there's actually a cool game mechanic where at the end of every round in this board game, whoever has the highest prestige is called the prestige leader. And that player is basically the king's advisor. And at the beginning of every dawn in the game, the king has 2 possible edicts, which are basically global effects that are going to happen that turn. And the prestige leader gets to pick which one of those he enacts. And they could be very big things, like the player with the most gold has to distribute his money to all the other players. Or all heroes, take damage, or, all sorts of things like that. So that's a really powerful position to have the most prestige. But if the king dies of natural causes, basically if he just kind of dies, because he's always losing health over turns, if he just dies and nobody killed him, whoever has the most prestige wins. So whoever's the prestige political player is actually kind of fighting on the king's side. You're defending the king, trying to gain his trust, and ward off anyone else who wants to knock him off prematurely. And you kind of, so you'll just inherit the throne after he dies of his own natural causes.
Gotcha. That is such a cool alternate win condition too. And I'm assuming there's a couple more.
There's one more, and the final one is you can go around the map collecting these spirit stones. They pop up randomly, and there's quests you can do in the game to get them. But if you collect 4 spirit stones, you become a spirit walker, and all the bad guys that show up on the map automatically walk away from you. They avoid you, and if you have them and you get to the king, you just kind of insta-kill him. You just kind of exorcise the demons from him, and it's just like this instant win condition of using the stone.
Wow.
So there's 4 ways to win, and every one of the houses in the game has a certain style that their preferred method of winning, but doesn't mean you have to stick to that. Like there's the rats, there's a couple of rat house characters, and they excel at gaining rot and using that to their advantage. The rabbit clan is very politically inclined. The bear clan are very high with magic power, so they're like this shaman clan, and they can they're best at getting the spirit stones, and then the Wolf Clan are just like the big warriors of the group.
Okay.
So the game's actually fairly complicated. It's not too complicated that I don't think anyone could pick it up easily, but there's a lot going on with this game. Every turn you start off, your character starts the game on like your home tile, and you have a certain number of action points to spend, and you could spend them to move spaces. If you decide to go into a dungeon space, your character could come out with an item, a treasure that he could equip. He might find followers. He might just fight things. Fighting things can earn you more prestige, which, as I mentioned before, has its use in the political game. You could fight other players. You'll get a lot of different cards also. These cards give you things like spells or maybe equipments, or you can play hazards on the table that if anyone walks on that space, they have to overcome a certain challenge, like roll these 4 symbols or spend cards to match the symbols that are on.
So kind of like a trap card situation.
Now, when you start, you also will pick a quest that you want to go on. So every character secretly is trying to get to a certain tile to take on their quest. And the quest usually has some little backstory to it, but that's relevant. It's just a type of challenge you want to take on for a certain reward. And it's a way to power up your character. And you're going to get stat bonuses. You might get important pieces of equipment, things to increase your odds of winning in one of the 4 ways. And you even have some cards. They're pretty cool political cards that are these pacts. You can play a pact card on one of the other players, and you can kind of force yourselves into an alliance. You could say, like, I'm going to play this pact on GV's character. And it says that we are in an alliance, and whoever betrays the other first, so whoever attacks the other player, like nothing will force you in this particular pact from not attacking me, but whoever attacks the other player first will become wanted by the king. And the king has these AI characters. He has like his own king's guard that wander around the map doing random things. But if you become wanted, they hunt you down. And now you have these AI characters that are trying to kill you in addition to other players.
So there is a loose incentive to remain in this pact, even though it might be beneficial in the long run for you to perform that betrayal later.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's other ones too. There's one that says as long as we remain in a pact, we both gain 1 prestige every turn. And you have to choose carefully who you want to make that pact with, because that can be very powerful for somebody, and they're not going to want to break the pact. But at the same time, you're both getting the stat, and only one of you could be the number 1 prestige leader. So there's going to be a point where one of you has to betray the other with that.
Yeah,
you
right.
know? There's all these cool spells. You can throw damage at people. Like I said, some characters have better spell stats, so they're better at using those cards. All the cards have great art on them too. Like, they have these like that slight animation, but they all have these really unique animal characters on them, and they have great theming to it, and it's just really cool looking too, just to use these cards and find them. But it's highly interactive, and you can play it online. It's not just like a one-player board game. You can play this online with other players. There's a scoring system based on, you can earn points every game you finish. Right? If you ever leave a game early because you don't think you're going to win, you don't score any points, but you get points for your account just for like getting first blood, maybe just for accomplishing quests, beating out players who are higher ranked than you, and you gain stars for doing that. And that helps you play other more experienced players over time.
Gotcha.
Achievements.
So it's kind of like a ranking system a little bit.
Yeah, it's like a little bit of a ranking system, but you don't always have to win to earn rank points. You just have to play and play well, and you're going to score some points for it. And there's a lot of unlockables too. There's a couple of items you can start out with, like ways to customize your character before you start playing. It's really pretty fun. Honestly, I could see this being made into a real board game. Like if they actually made this as a tabletop game, I think it would work.
So I guess the artificial intelligence is what makes it a bit tricky to implement in a tabletop form. But it really does sound like it is made to replicate a tabletop strategy experience.
Yes. The AI would be a little tricky, but I don't think it'd be that hard. I think they could easily make some rules of like, all right, the demons that spawn on these spots, they have just some very simple heuristic, like, if there's nobody around, you roll 1d6 and it moves in that direction. Or it always attacks the nearest player to them, or the player with the most rot, that kind of thing.
Yeah, unless there's like the bounty and the quest system.
Right. I think they could easily actually edit those things, but it does really work well with this because there's a lot of unexpected things. There are some features like hidden movements. So there's a day-night cycle. And if it's nighttime, being in the forest hides your character from other players, so they don't know exactly where you are. So that's something that really wouldn't work in physical. It would be really hard for people to temporarily hide where their character's been placed. But and there's some characters, their whole ability is that they're just stealth. Day or night, they can just hide where they're moving, and then you never know where that rat player is going to show up next,
Now, I do have to ask, how is the multiplayer in this? There's got to be online multiplayer or local.
There's online multiplayer. You can play it locally also, but
cool.
You have to dedicate the time. This is not a super short game. It's not like a super long board game, but I'd say a regular game takes about 30 minutes to play.
Gotcha.
And so it's not the kind of thing that you're going to casually just throw on and, play in like 5 minutes and be done. You have to definitely commit to it, which is why they do so much to promote people finishing games. But it works. It really does. It's the kind of game where if you were face to face, there'd probably be a lot of table talk about who to ally with. So they did add a little bit of a chat system. Like there's like a tree of chat. Like you could pick a character or you're saying something publicly, and then you could choose some pre-made sentences. You can offer people alliances or say, hey, could you like cut him off? He's going to win if he gets to that space, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of politics in this game, and it does a decent job of giving that to you without giving you the ability to just straight up type or chat. But I could see a game of this. Let's say we had a game of this with 4 players on Skype and people just like having their table talk over voice chat. I think it actually would work really well. I think it's a surprisingly good level of politicking in this game, even though it's not super complicated. And there's not even a lot of like punishment. If your character gets killed in battle, they just show up and they respawn back on your home turf. And you lose a prestige, they gain a prestige for beating you in battle. It's annoying, but it doesn't like ruin you. You're never like out of the game totally. So
I feel like this is one of those games that I actually kind of want to play. Like I really want to play this. And I kind of want to play this with the Discord friends.
I would love to play this with people. I did play it online, like I said, with some people I don't know, and it was pretty fun. But yes, I think this is a game that if you can get people to play, it's the best board game experience you can get. Yeah, you can get digitally with people and it's so funny because that's the opposite. I've bent over backwards trying to play my favorite board games with people online with like things like email moves, and we'd have like chat rooms dedicated to just like telling people what we're going to do. And I've had groups that we all set up a board like in our basement and we do it identically, and then we would just all like keep track of everybody's moves in the physical game, and we would just email the moves to each other, and it would take like a month to play a game, but it was something we were desperate to do. This provides a really good solution for that.
I like that a lot. And I'm very curious as to the price of this game, because this type of game might cost like upwards of $50-$60 in physical tabletop form.
Yeah, no, it is a $20 game.
Ooh,
you were absolutely right. If they were to publish this game as a physical board game, as I said, this really does feel like it could be. Yeah, it would probably cost at least $50, $60 for the production value of it. It's really that nice. And I think there's a lot of replayability. As I said, there's the randomization of the map. So it's never exactly the same. You don't know what cards are going to be dealt. And there's a lot of ways you can customize your character, different ways to try to win. And the special abilities of all the characters actually are, they have the usual type of board game special abilities. I was very fond of a character who his special ability was, normally you only have 3 equipment slots. And if you ever want to, let's say I find a really good sword, I'd have to replace one of my 3 equipments, and the one that I overwrote would just go away. his ability was anything you overwrite just goes back into your hand. And so you could switch your equipment all the time, and it really didn't cost me anything. So I felt like I could just customize my gear for every different challenge I came across, which was a really powerful ability. So it was really cool.
I feel like this game just scratches that tabletop itch in a way that can't get scratched very often in consoles.
Yeah, and they did a smart thing. As I said, the game can't ever go too long because there's a hard limit on it because, as I said, the king is always slowly dying. His hit points are dropping, and as his hit points drop and his rot increases, the players who are trying to slay the king are more likely to win through that way. And if they don't win that way, then he'll just die naturally, and then, the prestige leader wins. So the game always will end by, like, turn 10 or so, something like that. Anyway, good design, good game. Armello, if anyone's interested in getting a game of this going, definitely contact me on the Discord chat, because I am down to play this with everybody in the chat.
Cool. Yeah, I'm actually going to probably pick this up.
Ooh, you know what we should do? Oh, that'll be, maybe next week we'll do a tournament.
Oh,
Give people a week to learn it, give people a week or two to learn it, and then a couple of weeks, maybe we'll do an Armello tournament. I'm down for that. Okay, while I recuperate and re-roll my character, why don't you, Kellen, tell us a little bit about your more action-y game you've been playing this week?
Yeah, so I've been playing Shadow Fight 2. And Shadow Fight 2, at its core, is a 2D fighting game with martial arts themes that have a fairly unique art style and a very physics-oriented fighting system. Have you seen the screenshots of this game, Casey?
Yeah,
I feel like it's pretty necessary to at least have a picture of this in your head, because it looks different.
It's like a silhouette fighting game, right?
Right. The whole art style is centered around these silhouettes. You don't get you have a 3D character model, and you're fighting on a 2D plane just like in Street Fighter, but you don't see the details. You just see a silhouette, a black silhouette of the character. And that is kind of an interesting take on the genre, just because it really makes you focus on the movements of the character instead of the characters themselves, which is a bit tricky and a bit weird. Now, the game setup is fairly typical. You control one character on a 2D plane, Street Fighter style. Use your attacks and moves in order to deal damage to the opponent and reduce their health bar to 0. That type of standard stuff. However, what makes Shadow Fight unique is the fighting system itself. So each of your attacks are triggered by directional buttons and a button input for each of your punches or slashes, your kicks, your projectiles, and your magical strikes. So it has a directional button and a single button input.
So it's pretty simple to do all the moves.
Right, so the forward attack is in one move, back punch is another move. It's just as simple as that. But unlike typical fighting games, the animations of each of your attacks are rendered completely. So all of the moves are kind of slow compared to other fighting games. And while the game doesn't necessarily feel sluggish, you really have to deliberate with each of your attacks. Because whenever you release a punch or do a slash with your sword, the whole range of movement is displayed. The whole range of movement is played out. So, you know how in normal fighting games, sometimes some attacks just flash out there and is deliberately only 2 or 3 frames, right?
Okay, I get you.
Yeah, no, your 3D model does the whole movement, and sometimes that could be slower than expected. This means that it kind of discourages button mashing, and each attack that you let out there is going to leave you potentially vulnerable if you don't hit them right where the sweet spot is. So you're continuously calculating ideal ranges, how long an attack takes, how vulnerable you are with this attack, and that's kind of a unique take on the gameplay that's not really common in this genre.
Is this entirely a solo player experience, or is this like a 2-player versus fighting game?
It has 2 modes. It has single player and a sparring mode where you can play 1 versus 1, but there is no online multiplayer, which is a total bummer for this style of game, because I think it is actually pretty fun for what it is.
So it's only local multiplayer?
It's only local multiplayer. But the fact that there's a fighting game out there that almost strips away a lot of mobility and it moves as slowly as this means that it's a fighting game that maybe, people with disabilities might be able to get into.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, a physical handicap that might prevent them from getting into more standard twitchy fighting games. This is a slow enough fighting game where I feel like would be really accessible to that community, and it's a bit of a pity that there's no multiplayer for that.
Are there several characters, or you just have like the one standard?
So I'm going to go into the single player a bit later because that is its own beast essentially. But for the multiplayer, you have various characters all with their own weapon, a specific weapon, and a special property and a special magic attack. Some of the weapons can be sais, katanas, nunchucks, hammers, that type of stuff. And some of the characters can get pretty wacky. There's a golem character. There's lots of, skinny, almost skimpily clothed ninja women. And there's one cyborg ninja character that I picked up immediately.
Of course.
But yeah, so they have different attacks. A lot of properties of their attacks are different based on speed or how much damage they deal per strike. So that was a pretty cool element of it. The problem is, the art style is unique and each character is represented by a unique silhouette. That's the thing. Each character is only represented by a silhouette. You can see a 2D depiction of their character in a sort of profile, but the silhouettes still make it tricky to kind of discern a character between each other, especially if they're using similar weapons. So if you're in a little brawl and you're trying to hit each other close up, those silhouettes can start to overlap and you might lose track of your character a little bit. So it's a cool art style, but I feel like I have a sneaking suspicion that the art style kind of allows the 3D modeling team to be a bit lazier. Okay. They're probably all black, and you don't need to have any specific details on the 3D models. So all they need is the 2D depiction of the character and the 3D silhouette, which is kind of weird.
Okay. So you do find it a little hard to differentiate characters since they are just these silhouettes, and maybe the weapon is like the most iconic thing about each one? Yeah,
and honestly, the characters aren't incredibly different from each other. Some of their properties might be different, some of their swipes and angles might be different, but the biggest differentiating factor between characters is their magic attack, which is something that you build up over a specific round. Once you have a meter, once your magic meter is full, you can release a magic attack, which is, like a quick Hadouken or a razor that pops up from the ground that goes forward, or a lightning strike. And that's it. It's nothing incredibly spectacular, and it's really one of the only aspects of this game that's different from you just slugging it out with physical attacks. Which, if you like the physical attack element, then sure, that's fine. But if you're looking into something more stylish and bombastic, then this is not for you.
Okay. Have you gotten to actually try out that multiplayer at all, or it's?
I got to play the multiplayer with David, and it's a pretty passable fun time. Really, if you're going to get this game, I feel like you're going to go in for primarily the single player experience, which is its own separate mode, and I feel like it's a bit more fleshed out for this game. This does have a single player, essentially a campaign mode, where you play as a character called Shadow, which is a blank slate of a character, and you build it up throughout the campaign mode in different ways. This game does have RPG elements in the single player mode, where you can over time gather equipable items to up the stats of your character, or even have skill trees that allow you to tune how Shadow plays. There's a number of bosses that you have to fight. I think there's about 7 bosses, and then a series of bodyguards before those bosses that you have to fight, and kind of like a standard arcade fighting game hierarchy style. So you have to defeat the bodyguards before you get to the final boss of this area. and then you move on to the next area and do the same thing.
Okay.
So that's the progression. As a quick note, there are 2 in-game currencies that allow you to purchase improved weapons and upgrades, and you can earn that currency through fighting in tournament modes, survival modes, quests, that type of stuff. And I found the RPG side of this game to be a lot more compelling than the multiplayer side, which is really a strange thing to say about a fighting game. Because you know how I always say you go into the game, you go into a lot of games not expecting story. In this case, you kind of go in for the campaign and for the RPG building up Shadow to fight up stronger enemies. And that part was kind of fun. And that's probably where you're going to spend most of your time here. The RPG elements are pretty satisfying. The fighting game kind of does accommodate the RPG style a bit better than standard fighting games. So that's where this game is a bit more successful, in my opinion.
I do like the aesthetics of it, though, are pretty striking. I mean, the way the silhouettes are there against the colorful backgrounds, it does create a very dramatic look, like you're watching a movie scene or just something that's very... It's very artistically done, I think.
Yeah, each individual screenshot looks really cool, right? Mm-hmm. And I do think that when in the middle of playing the fighting game, it seems like it's a unique style. But once you continuously play and you see these 2 shadows hitting at each other, it almost kind of feels like they're the same character. Mm-hmm. Like, there's not that much difference when they're actually in motion. And it gets pretty monotonous.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But, the silhouettes can be cool, especially if you're fighting a big character with a striking, unique weapon design compared to another smaller character with a different, drastically unique weapon. But if they're 2 similarly built characters with similar weapons, it can get kind of tricky to keep track of.
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I guess there's no palette swaps to tell one character from another.
It's either black, maybe a lighter shade of black, or dark. So this is a $15 game, and I liked it. I did enjoy the RPG fighting elements of it, and it is a pretty lengthy single-player mode, so there is enough content to justify that price. Barely. But if you're a fighting game aficionado and you like the classic-styled fighting games, this is probably not one that you're gonna want to get into. But if you're not really a fan of fighting games because it gets too fast and too frantic, and you want something in the genre but slower paced, this is one to get. And even for the community that is a little bit more physically handicapped and can't get into fighting games normally, this might be one to consider as well.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah. So that's Shadow Fight.
Okay, so getting back now to the actually, interesting fact, you know what the 2 games that we just talked about have in common, both Armello and Shadow Fight 2?
What is it?
They're both games I played on iPhone before.
Ah, that's right. Shadow Fight was a freemium game previously, and I actually heard there were a lot of complaints about how they handled the currency in Shadow Fight Mobile.
Oh, yeah?
But they removed any sort of microtransactions with Shadow Fight 2 on the Switch, and you unlock all of the currency through quests and the survival and tournament modes. So that's not really a problem here.
Okay, so the next game I played was from, actually, you mentioned you had some friends over at Steve Jackson Games.
Ooh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, just for full disclosure, not that would affect my review of it at all.
It really doesn't.
Yeah. And this game is called The Warlock of Firetop Mountain. It's another tabletop-inspired game, but this one harkens more back towards the original, old-school Dungeons & Dragons, dungeon crawler type games. So much so that it uses a lot of that same art style. If you remember from like the old first edition D&D books, that's very pencil-y kind of art style. Once you see it, it brings back all those memories. And it even uses little miniatures to represent your character and the other characters that you come across. It's really cool. In fact, all the locations you visit get assembled as if like someone was dropping down pieces of the model for your little D&D campaign.
Yeah, cool. I can definitely see just all the tabletop inspiration with this game. It's very, very upfront with it, and I actually dig this art style a lot.
It's really cool, and it also, this basically plays out like a one-player D&D campaign. You start off by picking one of 4 characters that are unlocked, but as you go through, you're going to unlock a lot more. And what's really cool is every single one of them has not only a different backstory and a end goal that they're kind of like trying to get to in the mountain that you go to. They all have their own unique set of attacks that they'll use in battle, and 1 or 2 little traits, like maybe this character has keen eyes and he'll notice things that maybe other characters don't see. Or maybe this character's really good at like bluffing his way through situations. Because it's not just a battle game. This very much is like a narrated D&D experience. There's even this character who comes to you in the very beginning of it, who's like basically the dungeon master. She's apparently, this is like a series of like adventure books that people play that's fairly popular. So this like dungeon master woman, I think she's actually like a recurring character in all these adventure books that have come out in the past. And she introduces you to the game, and she narrates what you go through and tells you your backstory. So the game kind of almost plays out a little bit like a choose your own adventure book, because you start out, you go to the mountain. Let's say you pick the character who's trying to find an amulet that's important to his like faith, and that it's like a sacred relic to him that he's trying to get from the mountain and escape with. You go to the mountain, and it's a pre-constructed dungeon that you're going through with a few different branching paths that you'll get to take at certain points, but they all kind of go eventually towards the same ultimate like choke points and goals near the end. And so as you get to different points, you can say like, all right, do you want to go down the tunnel to the left, or do you want to go down the tunnel to the right? And then when you go down this way, you might say, oh, well, there's a sleeping goblin at this guard post. Do you want to sneak past him, or do you want to instigate a fight? And so, yeah, so you'll get to make these little decisions. Sometimes you'll talk to people, choose what you want to say to them. Different characters might have different interactions with them. But sometimes you'll get into these fights. And the fighting plays out on little grids, and they'll have, like I said, it looks like a little model
like a classic tabletop role-playing game.
Yeah, right. And so your little models and the enemies will be there, and every turn you're going to pick either to move or attack or use one of your special abilities. And yeah, it plays out in like a kind of like a simultaneous turn, like you're going to pick where you move or attack. And then, there's initiative, so the fastest characters will all go move first, and you're trying to anticipate where the monsters are going to try to attack you, where do you want to move, when's a good time for you to throw out this special attack, maybe do some poison. Positioning's pretty key, and you have to pay attention to how the monsters in the different battles act, because they're all fairly predictable, but they all have their own different predictable patterns that you have to kind of learn so that you know when to attack and where to send your attacks. Hopefully they'll move into it if you know where they're running to, that kind of thing like that.
Yeah.
So it's not that complex, but it's decently fun and decently strategic. It's a little bit of a puzzle. Also, as you're going through the main story of the dungeon, you'll come across these little benches that are places that you can sit and kind of save your progress. Progress saving isn't permanent though, because every run through the dungeon you get 3 soul stones. And if you should die, you can go back to the last bench you took a break at and pick up where you left off there. You also have food provisions and other items you'll pick up along the way. Maybe you'll get a potion of invisibility, which might let you bypass a certain, story challenge. Like maybe there's a scene where you have to steal a key from someplace. And you could either roll the dice and see if you pass your dexterity check. You might choose to leave the key alone and just take the hard way around. Or, no, I have this invisibility potion. You use it, and you can just, freely take this key from one scenario.
Okay, that's cool. So that was actually going to be one of my big questions. I was wondering just how much flexibility there is to types of things you can do during an encounter.
There's not like infinite, but I mean, there's definitely a decent number of fun little options and unexpected twists that happen. The way it plays out, though, is like the first time you run through it, you're not going to get super far. You'll probably get, I got pretty far, but then eventually I just hit like a certain section where I would get killed by this Minotaur like a few times in a row. And then the third time I fought him, I figured out how to like beat him, or I got a little lucky. You can get just bad luck sometimes. Fate. Yeah, they mitigate that with the soul stones and letting you, retry certain sections, especially sections where you know what you're to expect, more or less. But sometimes you just are not going to get the right dice and you're going to lose a battle and you'll die. But that's fine. That's part of the game. But the second time you run through it, maybe with another character, maybe like you'll unlock someone with even better attacks and stuff, the sections that you've already been through. And maybe you try a different way of solving certain problems. Maybe you'll try, if I go to this section first, I get a piece of meat on a stick that I can use to distract the dogs I run into over here. So you're going to get through the earlier sections a lot easier on repeated playthroughs. But eventually you're going to get yourself back up to the section that you died at before, and you're going to have, a new set of problems to figure out, and you're going to try to solve this dungeon. It's like, you're trying to solve the dungeon piece by piece every run through. And there are, again, like I said, some parts of it are randomly reassorted so that you don't always know which way to go. But it's pretty challenging. It's pretty fun. And I do like that they add different story twists for every character that you unlock and play as. And
okay. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, like I said, one of my characters, he was looking for this amulet, and there was one character who actually just had a lot of information. It was important for his character because he told me where to go to find this or that. The next playthrough, I ran into that same character as somebody else, and we had a totally different interaction. Not that you ever talk to anyone too long, everyone just kind of comes and goes. But the ultimate goal, though, is to find a certain number of keys that are randomly hidden throughout the dungeon. They could just be almost anywhere, so it encourages you to kind of stick your nose into as many nooks and crannies every run as you can.
Yeah. And regardless of how risky it potentially could be, right?
Right. You're going to try to mitigate that risk. Sometimes you're like, you know what? That room, I know it's behind there, and I never can handle it, so I'm just going to skip that room with this character. But, some other rooms maybe you know how to handle a little better. But yeah, you're going to try to explore as much as you can, because if you manage to beat the entire dungeon, you're going to unlock a number of treasures proportional to the number of keys that you found. And like I said, there's 3 keys every run you can find. And like I said, they move around every time, so you never can always know it's in the same place. It's never going to be there twice. But, you're going to try to find as many as you can, beat the dungeon, get a bunch of treasure, unlock more characters, and play it through with a slightly different experience in there. So
hearing about this game, it actually kind of reminds me of Hand of Fate too, which makes me feel like this style of game is becoming a genre of its own. And so far it's been going pretty well on the Switch.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. This and that both have that similar kind of story D&D like kind of gameplay. This is definitely leaning more towards the pre-planned stuff, right? Like I said, there are random elements, but the dungeon is completely designed and all the encounters are created. Whereas, Hand of Fate 2 is much more procedurally generated, sort of.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But they're very interesting. It definitely has a lot of fun replay value. I think it's best if you enjoy a little bit of reading and lore in your game. If you're only looking to play this for the battles, they're enjoyable, but they're not
the primary focus, really.
I'd say they're almost equally as much of the focus as the text adventure half of it. You really can't it's not like it would stand up as its own game, right? It's a good accompaniment to the D&D adventure, but I wouldn't buy a game that was just this combat. But this, combined with the storytelling and the adventure and little strategy, makes for a really compelling package, and it does give me an old school D&D vibe, even if it is only one character. You never make a party of characters. it still feels like very Dungeons and Dragons-y, and I really like it. I haven't played like a game that captures that feeling in a long time.
Yeah, and I'm as I mentioned previously, it does feel like this tabletop game genre is starting to really bleed into the Switch, and I'm excited to see more games of this style here.
Yeah, no, and you know, honestly, and like I said, I always like games that feel like they have good writing and they're like maturely written, and they don't shy away from scenes that might be a little gory or scenes that are, you know, a little harsh, but
like more mature elements and topics.
Right, like, because, you know, there's orcs and stuff, and orcs do messed up things, you know, here and there. But it's not like they do it gratuitously. They're just
right, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, no, they do it like it suits the world that's set in. It feels like they know what they're doing, and I don't know. I like the writing. I like the combat. It's definitely a fun game. And there's some gauntlet mode that you can unlock over time that does focus more on the combat. So I guess if that's an aspect that you did like as you play through the game, eventually you can unlock a mode that really tests your combat skills in this game. And you could just kind of run through a bunch of dungeons and see how far you can get purely in combat mode. So maybe the combat does stand up on its own for some people. But for me, it was not like, you know, I don't think gauntlet mode will be totally interesting to me.
Yeah. But, you know, it's there for people who really like that style of combat. And there are people who really like that style of combat.
Yeah. And like I said, there's a lot of really good twists. I don't want to spoil anything, but I kind of want to talk to people about some of the funny, crazy stuff that happens as you go. There's just some.
Do you have a least spoilery example that you can provide?
I'll just say that, like, there is one point. I won't tell what happens, but there is a point where, let's say, you run into you come across like an idol, and when you touch it, it tells you that it's possessed by a genie, and if you release him, he'll grant you any wish. And it's a big choice. Do I like trust this spirit that's talking to me? Do I let it out? If I do let it out, what wish will I pick? There's a lot of classic choices in that way. So yeah, cool. Anyway, that's the game. $30. You know, I think it could be worth it.
Yeah, especially with, I think the edition that's coming out on the Switch has a lot of more content than normal. I think it comes with extra stuff. So $30 for this type of experience might very well be worth it, it seems.
Not too shabby. Like I said, there's a lot of people who like to play D&D but never have a party to play with. This might feed that need.
Yeah.
All right, well, those are our games for this night. Why don't we take a breather and move on to our topics section in just a minute?
Sure, let's do it.
So here we are for our topical discussion section, which we're going to call Switch Focus. This is basically the community pulse mixed with whatever the hot topics of the week are. And we're going to go through a few of those, and then we're going to read off what your responses are to one of our biggest topics of the week.
I feel like this one's kind of a big deal to bring in Switch Focus as a segment. Our first discussion point, our first focus, will be the Nintendo Switch Online service that just recently came out.
Oh, yeah, so the Switch Online service. So, JV, I will assume that you have gotten your service plan you signed up for.
I did.
1 year or a family plan? What'd you get?
I did the family plan, which I think works kind of interestingly. What did you get, Casey?
I just did a solo 1 year plan. I know lots of people who are kind of treating this like the HBO Go thing, where they find as many people as they can to like share it with, and they all kind of log into the same account, and they would just like all get the benefits of it. It's worked into a $35 plan as opposed to the $20 plan I did for one person.
Yeah, so I don't want to necessarily promote any sort of gaming the system, since I love how flexible the family plan is right now. I'm currently in the family plan, and I have David under my account. And all I had to do was add him within the Nintendo account login system. All I had to do was add his email address, invite him into my family, and boom, now we're sharing Nintendo
That's
online.
pretty cool. Very simple sounding.
Yeah. This is still lumped into the $35 cost for the family plan, but weirdly enough, I feel like I can add more people.
Is there anyone close enough that you would think you would add? And is there any line that you would draw between the kind of people you would invite to share it with you?
I feel like the requisite for me is if we live in the same household.
Okay, fair enough. I can't think of anyone that I need to share it with. If Amelie wanted to play online, I don't think she'd have a problem just logging in under my account. So it's not like we'd ever be using it on two switches or anything at the same time. So, but I know a lot of people, several people, who are just looking for friends online to share an account with and split it with. And I mean, all right, so I kind of have very mixed feelings about this.
I agree. I'm with you there. It's a little mixed.
My main thing is, I assume that if it was anything that was a problem for Nintendo, they would have worked in some kind of system to prevent any kind of overextension of this feature, right? But they really haven't done anything to dissuade people from doing that. So I guess it's not something they really were worried about. And if anything, I think they may factor that into their pricing, that people are going to probably do this. But at the same time, it kind of feels like by the letter of the agreement, this isn't the way it was intended to be used. It kind of makes me feel like you're scamming the system a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I can understand people wanting to save a bit of money or, try to circumvent having to pay for Nintendo Switch Online by going this alternate route. Maybe people are just really upset about having to pay in general, and they're looking for ways to kind of stick it to the man.
Yeah, right.
I am a little, disappointed that people would want to abuse the system like this, because I feel like if this becomes more prominent, Nintendo is going to have to figure out a way to make it less convenient for legitimate families to join family plans.
Exactly, yeah. Because also right now, I don't think there's any real drawback to sharing it with your friends, other than you have to trust whoever's the master account, because they can set the parental controls for everyone else, and they can mess up or kick people out of the plan at will. So you just kind of have to trust that person, but that doesn't seem like too big a problem.
Yeah, but it is a $35 cost for the whole family plan, so you can share that $35 cost with, I think, almost as many people as you want. I don't know if there's a hard limit.
The limit is 8 people can share one family plan.
Yeah, okay, so that sounds about right, and I feel like people are probably going to abuse that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess now, are those the people who do this? Are those the people who would have been paying $20 anyway, or would these have been the people who probably wouldn't have gotten the plan at all? It's an interesting kind of question. Not that it really matters. At the end of the day, I still think it's just this weird gray area of morality, but I'm just curious.
I'm definitely not going to judge any individual for doing this, per se. But it's just a little gray.
Yeah.
And I feel like if people are going to the extent, if people are going to know about the system enough to use this workaround, I feel like they probably would have paid for the Nintendo Switch Online service by themselves. Mm-hmm. They just don't want to, or they want to save.
All right. So moving on, the phone app. Have you downloaded or re-downloaded or updated this thing for the Nintendo Online service?
So I've downloaded the service, even especially when it was just a beta for Splatoon 2. I feel like there hasn't been much change since it's originally been released, and I'm still disappointed in how little functionality there is with this.
I think they added some voice chat to a few more games. I honestly haven't even thought to look at the app. It has not been something I felt any need for, especially since Discord is my main connection to the Switch community. So the app, I guess, if you're not already part of a community, it might help you get in contact with some people to play with. But honestly, if you're listening to this podcast, you have a better option or two. So, no real feature, unless, like I said, if they added something that had phone alerts, something that buzzed me and said, hey, Johnny's playing Monster Hunter, want to join him? And then bam.
Well, it does actually do that now. it does have alerts for when friends ping you or when friends hop
and
online.
if anything else, I wouldn't mind maybe some scheduling and like so people can see, oh, he's going to be playing at this time at like 8:00 Thursday.
Oh, see,
that would be good.
That would be awesome. Like if the app can schedule events, notify friends when scheduled meetups are supposed to happen, that could provide some benefit and some incentive to actually use this app.
Yeah, because that's something I can't do on Discord right now, other than posting on there and saying, look, let's meet then. If I could put something in the app and then people can accept my invite, and now it'll give them a reminder, kind of like a Facebook event, hey, we're playing Monster Hunter in 1 hour. Be there, that would be not bad. I might use the app for that.
What I would love for the phone app is to see all of the online sessions that my friends have available. So I can go to the app, see my friends are playing, and join them from the app itself spontaneously. And that's not something that is possible right now, but that could be something that would justify an app like this.
Yeah. All right, moving on. So we have the classic NES collection on there. Was it like 25 games on there? 20 games on there. A good selection, though. I mean, there's some hit or miss. What are your highlights from that collection that you've been playing this week so far?
So just to start off, going into this, I expected the only 3 games to be available. The fact that they threw 20 whole NES games at us makes me feel like the value of the $20 is fulfilled with just this little collection, really.
Throwing on top of that, the online connectivity, a feature I never imagined they would actually add. I'm still kind of surprised when I played it with that.
Yeah. Just imagine back in the Nintendo era, imagine telling people in the past that you're going to eventually be able to play these games online with people that aren't even in the same household as you. Is mind-blowing. And I feel like this Nintendo online service is really adding value, especially with that online functionality.
I've gotten actually a couple of games in with some of the people in the community already. I played ice hockey and some balloon fight with some people. Both actually worked. My first game of ice hockey got a little bit ruined by some internet issues, but I think it was on my end. But I got that sorted out, and I did play a few games since then, and it's really awesome. It was way harder to get back into playing some of these games than I thought, though. Like ice hockey, the controls are made not to be like super precise because your characters are on ice. So it did take me a while, but it was really fun, like adjusting to this. And I forgot that, wow, this was like a launch title for Nintendo. It's not bad. I still enjoy this.
Yeah, like a lot of these games hold up pretty well if you have the expectations that it's still an NES game. Like, these games were fun back then, and a lot of them are fun today. For example, one of the games that I love playing most is Gradius. And while there are a lot of modern shmups that take the genre to the next level, Gradius, distilled at its core, is still a ton of fun. And it's something that I find myself picking up every once in a while.
So overall, you feel like, it sounds like we're giving this a thumbs up. It seems like a solid selection of games. Online connectivity works in a way that, I hadn't expected. Are they going to switch up these games like every so often, or do you think they're just going to add to the library over time?
I feel like there's not necessarily a reason to switch them out. I feel like they're just going to keep adding it. Or maybe they might add a different console every year. Maybe next year they might release an SNES, Nintendo Switch Online system, and let you play SNES games online. Maybe, I feel like this is potentially the primary replacement for the virtual console. And
I think also I just started playing today again, original Legend of Zelda, which, wow. Another game, I'm just like, I can't believe this was made like a billion years ago.
Yeah. Do you feel like it held up for you?
No, it totally does. I don't remember anything from when I beat it a million years ago, so it's totally fresh to me. I don't remember anything, and it's fun going from, since the last Zelda I played was Breath of the Wild,
it's such a contrast, right?
Yeah, but going from that, but at the same time seeing the similarities, like this is an open world game when games didn't even have that term, you know? I was like, wow, I really can go any direction. Like I remember in back of my head where the first dungeon was, but I was like, well, let me not go in that direction. And I just decided to see what was in any other direction of the map. And it gave me that same feeling of, ooh, I shouldn't be here. Like when I played Breath of the Wild and I would go straight to Hyrule Castle and I felt like, ooh, I shouldn't be here, but I got rewarded for it by like finding some items early and doing things out of order. Felt kind of cool.
Yeah, especially if you don't have that game memorized, that sense of wonder and discovery is still there. That's one of the aspects of that game that really made it so pivotal in gaming history.
And you know, just the fact that these are all dropped in your lap, right? These are all games that the previous systems sold to us for like $5, $10 a piece, and maybe people quibbled over, you know, whether they bought it before. The fact that it's just been dropped on your lap in addition to the regular price makes us all way more comfortable with just enjoying these and not feeling like, you know what, should I really spend $5 on this game? It's like, no, you've already paid. Here, play the games and just enjoy them in a way that you might not have felt as free to do if you had to buy them individually.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a good way for Nintendo to ease the blow of the having to pay for online.
All right, next up, are you going to get the NES Classic Controller?
You know, I feel slightly obligated to, just because I want to have that as an option for local multiplayer. But personally, I feel like the Joy-Cons are fine on their own, and it's not really necessary.
I personally feel like I do think I'd enjoy the NES controllers better. I'm not as comfortable treating my Pro Controller as an NES controller. Just something about the directional pad. I think that it feels right for this kind of game. And even feeling 4 buttons where there should only be 2, my brain hasn't quite adjusted to that yet. Like it's still tapping into a part of my brain that I haven't tapped since I was 14, and it wants to just touch these 2 buttons, but it's like, these 4 buttons there are just like throwing my hands off. So I feel like I would actually use these NES controllers, and I feel like having just the stripped down, only the buttons I need on there would just feel more natural to me.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I don't feel like it's absolutely necessary for me on my side. But I get that, and I feel like it's worth it for one of us to be able to speak to it.
Though, I mean, again, I'm kind of worried. It's like it's such a finite use, though, right? It's just for this series of games that's on there. I mean, it's probably going to be expanded library, so maybe I will feel like I get a lot of use out of it over time. But I kind of feel weird picking a controller up just for a subsection of my games.
Yeah, it's also a really cool novelty item to have. just because Joy-Con NES controllers, I think that's pretty cool in and of itself.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to read some of your responses to the online service. There was a very big conversation about this on the Facebook group, so we actually have quite a lot of responses you guys just organically threw out there without even me asking for it. JV, were there any responses that you particularly liked?
I'm gonna start with Rich Benda. Rich Benda said, "It's $20. Really? Say it out loud. $20." And then Rich elaborated, actually to you, Casey. Yes. He said, "I'm saying it's $20. That's a paltry amount, even for the limited functionality at launch. Heck, you get cloud saves, which should be free, and more than $20 worth of games with more to come. Is it perfect? No, but it's still way behind what the Xbox Live was even 10 years ago. Chat needs to be redone, but I'm saying it's only $20. I feel like that's a really good point, because there are a lot of expectations when it comes to paid online multiplayer. Mm-hmm. We've had Xbox Live, we've had PlayStation Plus. Those have been really solid entries and give us a lot of the basic features that we expect, like a built-in console chat system, party system, etc. This isn't quite that. what we have on the Switch is nowhere near that level, but it is also a fraction of the cost, which is something that we really need to emphasize more.
Also, I feel like it's really hard to judge it like this. People were coming out on it very critically. Day one, we heard a lot of like strong feedback in both directions, but it's just like, this is just what we got the very first week. I mean, for that $20, you're not just getting everything that you got today. You're getting 12 months worth of whatever else they have planned to release. They also mentioned there's going to be some special offers coming up and other content, and this whole year of the online service. So the fact that we got all this day one and it's already like filled my life with so many more experiences is really impressive to me. But we still have a lot more to tap into. So I just kind of want to ask people to, you know, if it's fine to be critical of it, but just like keep in mind, this is just what you got in the first week now. And there's going to be more. But to read someone's critical feedback, Peto Onivas wrote, "In the end, I need it for Smash and when I play other online games with friends. I like having Balloon Fight at my hands, but the online lag is insane. When you get 2 to 3 lag spikes in Dr. Mario, when you're in handheld standing right by your router, it's a problem." I mean, I guess the lag could be an issue. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I experienced it the first night also, but it might have been the spike of activity. They might have been a little bit overwhelmed with day one, everyone who got it, everyone's on the service at the same time. It might have been a bigger spike this first week than they will probably experience throughout the year, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and it's the first day, so naturally there will be lag spikes, just because the server is handling so many people at once. Even Xbox Live and PlayStation Plus experience that type of lag during its first days. It's going to be natural. It's going to be expected. That's not too big a deal. If we see these lag spikes within the next month or a couple months, then that's going to be a sign. That's a bad sign. Yeah. But so far, we don't really have any evidence that NES Online will be laggy going in the future.
I'm sure they're going to redouble their efforts.
Yeah. So I do want to bring up one more kind of negative response. Mm-hmm. This is from CJ Thorpe. He said, "Yeah, it's pretty terrible. As a young Brit in the 80s, I barely played any NES games. So I was looking forward to this service to try out the games that I'm always hearing Americans rave about. But I think everyone heard I must be nostalgia blind, as almost all these games are so dull and clunky by today's standard. I don't play online and don't care about cloud saves, so I'll be avoiding the service until they add some games from newer systems." So here's the thing. CJ is, clearly pretty negative on the online service. But he already mentioned that he doesn't play online and he doesn't care about cloud saves. So there's no reason for him to pick up the server. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't
it's true. I mean, it's...
Yeah, like if you don't play online and if you don't care about cloud saves or any online functionality, then don't pay for the service. It's just that clear. It's just that cut and dry.
That is exactly what we forgot to mention, I think. But there is the free trial week that everyone can use, and if you just wanted to try these NES games and you want to see whether or not you'll even use online gaming, do the trial week either now or maybe on the week of a big game release that you want to try it for. But definitely do that first. And maybe these NES games aren't for everyone, but you're going a little too far just by saying everyone who likes them is just nostalgia blind. That's kind of like just name calling people who disagree with you. I'm not nostalgia blind. There's some of these games I definitely am not super fond of. Like just Mario Brothers is a game that I enjoy for like 10 seconds before I start getting tired of the gameplay. It's just a game that gets monotonous fast to me, but there's plenty of people who will love it to death. But some of these games, I mean, they do live up to the hype, in my opinion. I think games like The Legend of Zelda, I love playing Ice Climbers, and that hockey game, like there's a lot of really good games on there, but some people just don't respond to like 8-bit graphics or just maybe don't like the old school sensibilities in game design, and that's fair.
Yeah, that's definitely understandable. But the fundamental game design is still there for a lot of these games. And speaking on a personal level, I never really grew up with an NES, and all of these games I explored later in my life. So there is no nostalgia tied to these games specifically. Mm-hmm. It's just on a ludological level, I feel like a lot of these classic games have really great design choices and design elements that paved the way for so many games in the future and still hold up today. As I mentioned previously, Gradius, it's still fun to play even now. Same with a lot of games like Zelda, as you mentioned. Super Mario Bros. 3 holds up for me. River City Ransom.
Oh, that is great.
Dr. Mario.
Yeah.
As games on their own, I feel like they stand out and hold up even
Amanda
today.
Gensel wrote, "My whole family has Switches, so even though none of us live together, we're all on a family plan, which works out to like $7 a year for each of us, which is a crazy good deal. I think the biggest problem is that Nintendo was originally going to release paid online a year ago and had billed it from the Switch launch as you get the first 6 months free and then we'll switch to a paid online. But then they delayed it forever, and now it feels like we should be getting something more when really every company charges for online now. $20 isn't bad, and we got a nice 1.5 years free." Honestly, I think that 1.5 years free kind of tainted people's opinions because now they're so used to it being free. I think they forgot that this was always going to be a paid feature, and now they kind of feel like they're paying for something that they shouldn't be.
And I can understand that sentiment, but honestly, we're not getting that different of an online experience than we have previously. Like, Splatoon 2's online multiplayer hasn't gotten worse because of this. Mario Kart online multiplayer hasn't gotten worse because this has come out. And people haven't been really complaining about the online infrastructure then. So it's going to be a lose-lose situation for Nintendo in that front. And I feel like they originally planned to give out 3 NES games at first. But throwing a full 20 games at us to soften the blow was a good
All right,
idea.
so those are our responses to that. Let's just end this little section with one last topic of funness. Have you seen Bowsette?
Oh my gosh. As soon as they released the Princess Crown thing, the internet was gonna gobble that up and create like a ton of waifus based on that thing.
It's really fun. So if anyone hasn't seen, Bowsette is basically just a fan creation that's exploded as one of the biggest Nintendo memes of our age. We had in the trailer last week, we talked about for the new Super Mario Brothers game, where Toadette gets a little crown mushroom and she becomes Peachette, where she's just basically Peach fusion style with Toadette there. Now they took the next step where a comic strip, long story short, a comic strip had Bowser use that crown to become Bowsette, basically Bowser fusion of him and Peach, and people have run with it, and there's been a flood of fan-made variations, amiibos of this character, different stylings, and everywhere that the internet tends to take characters. So
yeah, just imagine the directions that the internet would take with a female Bowser, a female princessified Bowser.
Yes.
And it's gone there. And a lot of other characters have been getting the Et treatment, the princessification treatment, and it's been both funny and sometimes horrifying.
I like it though. I think this is in general. I like that this character spawned from the community as a whole, more or less.
Right. I love the internet collaboration element of the character, but I'm not necessarily a fan of the style of artwork that some of these fan arts employ.
But I honestly think that so Nintendo obviously isn't the type that's going to make this a canon anytime in the future, but they are the type that they've learned to acknowledge memes and have fun with them. And I feel like this is the kind of thing that they're going to reference subtly and maybe even tease us and hint that it will become a thing, but
Oh, absolutely, they have. They've already done that. A number of their social media tweets or social media posts have featured Bowser for some reason. and it does feel like it's a direct nod to Bowsette and how popular Bowsette has become.
And honestly, I think Mario's universe could use a bad girl, and you know what? If it's Bowsette, that she might just fit the bill for that.
You bring that up, how there should be a female villain in the Mario universe. Mm-hmm. I feel like Bowsette could be the one.
Definitely.
Totally.
I'm game. I hope this stays with us for a while. Honestly, I'm totally on board with this meme.
I'm not a fan of how lewdly she's drawn sometimes.
Yeah.
But the character design overall, I think, is pretty cool.
I like her. I like her to have edge, but it doesn't have to have that. Anyway, if you guys want to suggest topics for us to take on next episode, we want you to post about them either on Facebook or Twitter. Just use the hashtag SwitchFocus. That's one word. And I will find those and I will incorporate all the best topics that you've brought to our attention for next week's Switch Focus section. All right? So definitely get on that, guys.
Yeah. Let us know what we should focus on next time.
All right. Quick breather, and we'll go and close this episode up.
Let's do it.
All right, so let's close things up. News rundown. This is just going to get the, so we could talk about other stuff. This is the section we're going to just go over only the most important stuff from now on. So, JV, what do you like?
One of the big deals that within the industry itself is that Sony is finally caving and allowing Fortnite to be crossplay. This means that that Switch players can play with the PS4 and the Xbox and the PC together. This was a big problem before, because when the Switch version of Fortnite came out, a lot of the Switch players already had PS4 accounts, but they could not use that account for the Switch version or any other version. Sony's finally budging and allowing that account merger to happen, which is huge, which is a big deal.
Yep, I think it's a victory for the communities, because you know what, they had to have done it based on the pressure and just realizing that they're kind of ostracizing themselves from the rest of the online communities.
And this is why being vocal, but being constructively vocal, is essential in this day and age.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
All right, kind of going to what we were talking about before, about maybe in future years, other systems being added to the online service. There were some data miners that have discovered some of the code referencing other systems, including SNES, Game Boy Color, Nintendo 64, Game Boy Advance, and Nintendo DS. And it even used the word virtual console. This is all in the code of the Switch Online apps. So it could just be leftover stuff. It could mean nothing, but it is it's a little bit of a beacon of hope for anyone who is hoping, especially seeing the DS on there is actually pretty surprising. So
I am so hyped for this. I would love to be able to play Game Boy games, Game Boy Color games, GBA games, DS games online. If they bring Advance Wars, even the GBA version, to this Nintendo Switch Online, and I can play that online multiplayer, that's going to be a dream come true for me.
All right.
Just as a quick heads up, it looks like Sakurai confirmed that Smash Bros. Character reveals will start to slow down from this point on, which is kind of expected. I think we got more characters revealed than we even initially expected before launch, so just to set that expectation, we're probably not going to get as many characters as before.
All right, fair enough. We mentioned last week that they were going to have a big announcement from Capcom at the Tokyo Game Show, and we did get to see what it was. It was not a brand new title for Switch, but they did announce that the Phoenix Wright Trilogy, which is Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, Justice for All, and Trials and Tribulations, will launch early 2019 in Japan. There's going to be a physical collector's edition, and I'm sure there's going to be a eShop version of it as well. and I'm sure both of these will come to the US. They already have an English and Japanese voice and text translation on that version of it available, so you'll be able to switch to it. In fact, you could probably just download the Japanese release of it and play it probably quite fine, because it's already obviously translated from the DS versions. It's just a matter of getting a version in your region. But we're getting them, and it looks like it might have some updated graphics and art, and seeing it on a big screen would be pretty cool. But I'm still hoping for a brand new title for the system. So
I feel like this is going to be a good way for them to gauge interest on the Switch, and if people really buy into it on the Switch, they'll release new games here. Mm-hmm. And this is just another way for people who haven't experienced the game before to experience it. So it's a net positive all around.
The only other game I wanted to mention that I heard about coming out, Blazblue Central Fiction Special Edition. I always talked about how Blazblue is the fighting series that is most focused on their storyline, and this goes to show it even further. This actually came out on, this is probably an expansion to a PlayStation 3 version that came out a while back, but this is coming to Switch, and it's a mix of the 2D fighting that Blazblue is known for with the visual novel style storyline driven gameplay. So again, it's Blazblue story with fighting.
I feel like that's how it should be. It just makes sense combining the two genres into Blazblue.
Well, their pure visual novel was total garbage, in my opinion. So
right. So
keep
maybe
keep
make
it mixed. Yeah.
No, that's not what I mean. Like having the 2D elements with a visual novel, combining the two probably makes more sense.
Yeah, I'm game with that.
Yeah. So for new releases on September 27th, we are getting Dokuro, Alwa's Awakening, Moorhun Wanted, Armello, Whispering Willows, Wandersong, X-Order, Rise and Shine, and Towerfall. On September 28th, we're getting Dragon Ball FighterZ, Jack and Jill DX, Namco Museum Arcade Pack, and Demon's Crystals. On September 29th, we're getting Marble It Up. On September 30th, we're getting Monster Loves You. And on October 2nd, we are getting Mega Man 11! Ooh. Batman, The Enemy Within, the Telltale series, I guess.
Oh, no, probably not. Maybe.
And Voltherian Arc Hero School Story.
I will say that they did note one of the things that happened this week is Telltale just kind of went up and closed their doors. They do have a couple of projects that they're trying to finish, and they're looking for partners to help fund these games to the finish line. I know the Minecraft story mode is one of them, and probably the Walking Dead final season. So that's why I don't think that this title will get the finish line, because those are their priorities. First the Minecraft, because they have a lot of deals with that, and then the Walking Dead, and I don't think that this is going to get the pickup.
Yeah, it's a very tragic situation with the Telltale developers and employees. So big shout out to all the Telltale employees who got laid off this past week. We're really hoping that you all land on your feet and find really good studios to work for in the future.
Well said, well said.
Yes.
All right, well, I think it's time that we retire this episode. Should we, JV?
Absolutely. If you guys like the Switch Focus segment, please let us know if there's any way we can improve it, maybe streamline it a bit more in the future. Keep us posted, and we'll do what we can to continue improving this podcast for you all.
Yeah, I'm extremely self-conscious of any change I make, so I definitely need feedback. Even if it's bad, if you guys don't like it, I need to know. But if you do like it, definitely let me know. Either just messaging me on the Discord or leaving a review and letting me know.
Yeah, for sure. Any feedback is absolutely welcome. Any constructive feedback is absolutely welcome. Let's say it like that. Right. And until next time,
switch it up. Thanks for listening. You can support the SwitchCast by visiting us at patreon.com/theswitchcast and join the review crew by rating us and subscribing on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Also check out our Discord chat where we have an enthusiastic bunch of Switch fans in a family-friendly environment. Also join our Facebook group for daily discussion and quite a bit of activity towards the Switch itself.
You can also contact us directly via email at kc@theswitchcast.com and jv@theswitchcast.com. Talk to us on Twitter @theswitchcast.
Thank you, Heatley Bros, for the theme music. And check us out on our website at theswitchcast.com, where we will post all relevant links and show notes.
Promotional considerations provided by publishers in the form of review copies of games. Almost sounds like I'm just asking for it to bite me in the butt. Like that kind of...